Okay, my first sight of Aindra. So it was January 5th, 2001. So I was 13 years old, not 14 yet. And I was a brahmachari, a young brahmachari. And my father, I came with my father to Vrndavana. He brought me here. And we're in the temple room, maybe in the courtyard, middle of the courtyard or so, towards Gornitai, walking. And my father, Aindra Prabhu, was doing his kirtan, his normal kirtan time at that time. Like, 6:15, winter schedule, so, 5:45 to 6:30, like that. And so my father showed me, look, see, that's Aindra Prabhu. That's Aindra there singing. Because, Aindra is, that was a very famous name. Everybody knew Aindra, But, a lot of people didn't actually know who he was, didn't actually see him. In fact, my father says that when he heard Aindra Prabhu's voice for the first time, he thought, oh, this is some Bengali devotee or something. Many people say this. Then when he came, actually what it was he was outside the temple room while Aindra Prabhu was singing. And he thought, oh, some Bengali devotee is singing. So he rushed into the temple room, and he saw this white-bodied, short, stocky American devotee with red hair and a red beard, just like pounding on the wampers, dancing, jumping up and down, ecstatically. And he saw, oh, this is Aindra. So, I didn't necessarily think like that or anything, but he showed me, oh, this is Aindra. I said, oh, okay, nice. And then next to him, I saw Govinda, or I saw a devotee that it looked familiar, that I had seen at the New York temple, just a few years ago, because I used to go there. I knew Govinda from that time, and he looked familiar. And then I was like, yeah, that's that Govinda that we knew in New York, And he was right next to him. He was a brahmachari, playing a really big-headed mridanga. So yeah, that was a very memorable sight, So when I happened to become Aindra Prabhu's mridanga player, not exactly, but about a year and a half later, then when it was exactly 2 years later, like January 5th, 2002, then I remembered my first sight of Aindra, and I was I remembered that Govinda was here also. And he was sitting in the same place, playing mridanga. And now I'm doing that service, sitting next to Aindra Prabhu.
My first memory of Aindra Prabhu was of my father telling me about him, this godbrother of his, who he had arranged a ticket for. And I even vaguely remember my father asking his assistant at the temple, London Temple, Radha Londonishwar, Soho Street Temple, if he made it to the temple, or so. He'd sent someone to pick him up from the airport. This was him traveling from New York to London on Air India. My father was a travel agent back in the days. In the 80s, he used to do the ticketing for all the sannyasis in ISKCON who frequently traveled. And he became known as the travel agent for ISKCON for a while. And so Aindra flew into London. I believe he stayed for a day or two while my father got him a visa, or he may have already had a visa, but my father arranged his ticket then from London to Delhi, and he went and checked him in at Heathrow Airport. He took him to the airport. So I remember my father telling me about this devotee who does kirtan, who's into kirtan. And he went to Delhi. Then, that was in 1986, Mahaprabhu's 500th anniversary. And a lot of devotees were going to India, Mayapur Vrindavan Festival. So we kind of felt bad that we didn't go. We didn't get to go, me, my older brother, and also my father. So we went in 1989. So we came to Vrindavan first before going to Mayapur. Took darshan of Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi. Srila Prabhupada, it was a construction site, pretty much, as far as I remember. A lot of scaffolding. And then we walked into the Krishna Balaram temple. It was the first time I walked into the temple. And the first thing that hit me was very beautiful, the courtyard, the tamal tree, the domes. That's even before you get up to the darshan. So then we're entering the temple. And then, you know, like most pilgrims, they come in by Srila Prabhupada's side in front of Gaur Nitai. So I come up those stairs, and I turn to my right, and I see this person with like red hair, stubble, unshaven, playing mridanga with another devotee playing kartals, two-man kirtan. And his eyes were shut, and he was singing and playing mridanga. And as soon as I heard that Maha Mantra, it went straight into my ear and went straight into my heart. And it affected me immediately. And I was like, wow, I've never heard the Maha Mantra like this in my life, ever. And it really immediately affected me. But then my father was like, let's go, time for darshan. So we did darshan, Gaur Nitai, Krishna Balaram, Radha Shyam, took Charnamrita, and then he said, okay, come, let's sit down. This is my god brother. Remember I told you I did this ticket for him? I was like, okay, all right. So we sat down, and I remember him playing mridanga, and he was sliding on the mridanga with a glove. He had a glove on. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I was just this kid, 9 years old or something. And I was like, wow. I was telling my brother, check it out. He's got a glove on. That's such a cool idea, because, you know, playing mridanga hurts your hand. But he was like, had this glove on. And I was like, ah, pretty cool guy. And he was doing kirtan. And at a certain point, I could see he was like having some issues with his vocal, with his voice. And he asked the other man to carry on, put the mridanga to his side. And he turned to my father, and he greeted my father, Hare Krishna Prabhu, Haribol, how are you? And they started, you know, discussing, having exchanges, because they knew each other. My older brother was there also, and then I saw the mridanga. I became attracted to the mridanga. I was like, oh yeah, I want to play that mridanga. And he had it on the side. He didn't have it sitting up. He had it on the side. So they were kind of sitting there, and I leaned over, and I grabbed the mridanga, and I pulled it towards me. And I was ready to catch the mridanga and then pick it up and put it on my lap. And I guess from his peripheral vision, he just saw this mridanga rolling. And he turns around and grabs it and looks at me straight in the eyes with this intense stare. Hey kid, be careful. Hey, Haribol Prabhu, what are you doing? You could break it. And I was just like totally flipped out. It was just this little kid. He basically chastised me. And I turned to my father for help, and he says, yeah, don't touch other people's things. What are you doing? And I just, I started crying. It was really intense. And I never forgot it. First of all, the two things. One, the kirtan, hearing that holy name. And then the second thing is chastisement. And it stayed with me for quite a while. And then when I finally came back to Vrindavan as a young man, I was staying with the Gurukul, studying the VIC courses. People were telling me about this person, Aindra, and his kirtan, but I never had time to go because I was studying. And then eventually, that was around January, February. So until Kartik, that year was 1997. He just finished Praise to the Dust of Braj from Madhava. So then Kartik, 1997, I was in a kirtan playing wampers, with Niranjan Swami leading and some Gurukul boys that I knew playing mridanga. And there was this guy jumping around like a madman in the kirtan, and I was looking at him and I was thinking, that face is familiar. I know that face from somewhere. And then I was playing the wampers on the side, and he came over to me. I didn't realize. He leaned over my ear. He said, kid, that's a no-no. And as soon as he said that, I was like, that's him. That's that guy that traumatized me when I was a kid. He's still here from the 80s. Oh man, I'm going to find out what's this guy's story, what's his deal. And then later I found out it was Aindra. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to show him what I wanted to show him back then on Mridanga. And that became like so much of my bhav, that as a Mridanga player, I was going to show him what I wanted to show him as a kid. But I wasn't allowed because it's considered irresponsible. That was my first two memories of Aindra Prabhu, 1989 and then 97.
And so I used to play with Govinda. And Govinda and I used to play Mridanga together for Aindra back then. And I was mostly following him, at the time. Because, my Mridanga playing actually fructified as as the years went by, as I played for Aindra more and more. But back then, he was singing a lot in the morning also. Meaning after Bhagavatam class, especially on the weekends. On the weekends, he used to dress Radha Shyam Sundar. He was the best dresser of Radha Shyam Sundar here in Vrindavan. So he used to dress Radha Shyam on the weekends, on Saturday and Sunday. So what he would do is, back then, that system of taking Prabhupada out, doing the parikrama with Prabhupada around the temple after the Guru Puja Kirtan at 7:45, that wasn't existent. They started that maybe in 2003 or so. So this time that wasn't there. So there wasn't any little gap to fill in of 15 minutes. But after that started, he started filling in that gap on the weekends when he was there. But back then, instead, he would sing at 9 o'clock after Bhagavatam class. And he would sing for sometimes, 1 hour, an hour and a half, until 10, a lot of times until after 10, or at least up until 10, until the next shift came. So that was the first time that I ever played Mridanga for Aindra Prabhu alone. Before I was playing with Govinda, all the time, most of the time, following him. But this was the first chance that I had to play with him, just he and I, together. At first, for some reason, we were in front of Gaurnitai. He started singing in front of Gaurnitai. Now this kirtan was only 3 people. Me, Aindra, and Akinchana Krishna. So we started in front of Gaurnitai. I started playing for him, And suddenly he turned to me and said, I want to be in front of Radhe Shyam. So he slid the whole harmonium. We just completely moved all the way across the temple room, to in front of Radhe Shyam.
So then, in Srila Prabhupada's centennial year, 1996, I was serving at Bhaktivedanta Manor where I grew up, and Gauri Prabhu from the Gurukul here had come, and he asked me to accompany him and play Mridanga at some programs he was doing. He was kind of fundraising for the Gurukul. He wasn't in charge of the Gurukul, but he had a certain responsibility. And I came with him and I'd play Mridanga on the programs, and then he would put these cassettes on in the car. And I'd be like, wow, what are these cassettes? He'd say, oh, these are Vrindavan mellows. There's this devotee, Aindra Prabhu in Vrindavan. He does 24-hour kirtan. So I think I loaned a cassette from him or copied it. And then before he came back to Vrindavan, he told me, if you ever need a place to stay and you come to Vrindavan, come and see me. So that's how I first came here. I stayed with the Gurukul. But so then back in England, I'm listening to this cassette, and I was just blown away completely. I put my earphones in, I lay down and closed my eyes, and it took me somewhere completely out of this world. And that kirtan, those Vrindavan Mellow cassettes, took me into a headspace that all I wanted was to find out who these people were, where are these devotees, and how to do that kind of kirtan with them. And who are these people, the personalities behind the voices I was hearing. And that was like a driving impetus to bring me to Vrindavan. Consciously or even subconsciously, unconsciously, it happened.
he was a perfectionist. He wasn't an easy person to please, really, you know. Everything had to be perfect, you know, especially if you were playing Mridanga for him, you know. There's actually only about 6 or 7 people that on the planet that could play with Aindra, like, satisfactorily, you know, according to his satisfaction. So, you know, it's not really an easy job. You had to be really very in tune with, you know, with what he wants, you know, be really in tune with his mood, you know. As he would say, you know, be very sensitive. You had to be very sensitive, you know.
I didn't really know him, but I was up in the ashram, the brahmachari ashram, I can't remember why, and there was just clouds of smoke pouring out of a room. And I was like, what's going on? There's a fire. Somebody's room's on fire. So I ran over to this room, opened the door and came in, and I was like, Haribo, is anybody there? Is everyone okay? There's a fire, what's going on? And it's this room full of smoke, and I just hear this voice, that's the problem, there is no fire. And I was like, okay, what does that mean exactly? It means open the windows, open the door, help me get the smoke out. So it must have been at least 20 minutes. I was just there opening and closing the door, trying to get all the smoke out of the room. And eventually I get this voice from the other side of the room, just forget about it, and just, you know, Prabhu, it's just going to have to be the way it is. Let it be. It's just going to go out in its own time. So who are you anyway? And so I introduced myself, and he introduced himself to me in this room full of smoke. We couldn't see each other, and I had my eyes shut because it was just burning. I was like crying, and then finally when the smoke cleared, we were both in tears, talking to each other. It took maybe a good half hour, 40 minutes for the room to totally be clear, and then we just talked till 2 a.m. That was quite an amazing discussion. We talked about so many things. We talked about kirtan a lot. He talked about Krishna a lot. And I would always come to him with philosophical questions, and come with like doubts I had about the way things were going in the society. I'd come to him about general questions of Krishna consciousness. And if he wasn't in kirtan, if he was in his room, and I could access him, he had all the time in the world. That was 97 Kartik. I just remember coming out of his room, I don't know, it was like 2 a.m. or 2:30, and I was just like, wow, that's the time? It was like the more we were discussing Krishna consciousness, the more it became relishable, and the less we wanted to stop. But I think at one point he's like, okay, I have to put my deities to rest now, and take some prasadam with you. And because I was living in the Gurukul, in those days it was all open, the whole Gurukul building, so I just walked across the veranda and went back to my room. But it was always that Aindra had time. That's what I remember. He always had time. He always seemed to have time for someone who came to him with some questions.
Yeah, we came back that year in July 2002. And I got some more experience, playing Mridanga for Aindra, Got my foot more in the door, a little bit more, I got myself more established in that service, at that time. I was more established in that service. At the same time, Govinda was kind of on his way out. He changed his cloth from saffron to white, and he was, planning to leave for a little while. He actually left for a few years. So that gave, he left end of Kartik. He left sometime in August, end of July, August, like that. And around that time, around the middle of 2002, that's when Gopal and I became more established as, the Mridanga players of Aindra. Together we became Aindra's Mridanga players, and we played together a little bit. He was always traveling around here and there, so he came back in, I think it was August, early August, right before I left. I also left for a few months again, I had to go change my visa. I had to go to America, change my visa, and come back. So he'd come back from somewhere. We played together a little bit, and Govinda was on his way out. So it was becoming more like Gopal and I were being established as Aindra Prabhu's Mridanga players.
And then in 97, Kartik, Aindra Prabhu had his first CD production of Vrindavan Mellows available. So I went to him to purchase them, to distribute in South Africa. I was doing service at that time in South Africa under the direction of Bhakti Tirtha Swami. So we had some discussion. He wasn't a businessman. I could see that very clearly. He was a sadhu, a very simple sadhu. And he said, well, Prabhu, this is how much it cost to make, and, whatever you want to give on top is a donation. Okay, so I went to Delhi, I changed my money, came back on the bus, and I came to see him in the evening, a few days before I left Vrindavan. And I calculated what he was saying the cost was, double of that, because I knew how much I could sell them for. And I counted out the Lakshmi, we counted it out. I was going to put it in his hand, and he refused to take it. He said, no, you put it on my deity's feet, Nitai Sachi Sutta. They are the maintainers of 24 kirtans. So I put the Lakshmi on Nitai Sachi Sutta's feet. And when I looked at his big Gornitai, I asked him, what is this mudra? After I put the Lakshmi on the feet. He said, this mudra means take the mercy without fear. Abhaya. Kripa and abhaya. Take the mercy without fear. And I was trying to understand what that meant a little bit more deeper. But for me at that point, I was such a neophyte young person. I only had a certain amount of money, and I bought these CDs with the hope I could sell them and make some profit. And I didn't have much money left. I was on a shoestring budget, like most youth coming to India for the festival. Went back to South Africa, and during the Rath Yatra, I sold them all for a huge profit. And I told myself, you know what? That's the mercy of those deities in Vrindavan. And that Prabhu, because that Prabhu didn't even want to touch the money. He made me put it on his deity's feet. So I'm going to keep that money aside for my ticket to come back to India. And I kept that money in reserve, and I used that to come back to India in 1998.
Still kind of young at that time, so he became like my father. Actually, he was like my father. He was like my dad. So one time, it was cold, very cold. You know how cold the winter gets here in December. I was getting shaved up. All I had on was a gamsha. So I was on the next floor down. You could see that there's some floor space, which is overriding, or whatever. I can't get into the whole thing right now. But in any case, if you walk down the hallway here, you can actually look down and see the whole floor, right? The whole Gurukul floor. So at that time, the Brahmachari ashram had a few rooms down there. So we had that balcony space. We had some space down there. So a lot of devotees would actually get shaved up down there back then. So I was getting shaved up. All I had was a gamsha on, And Aindra Prabhu, he was walking down the hallway to go to the bathroom or something, And he looked down and he called me, hey Vrindavan, And I looked up, I saw, Aindra Prabhu's there. He's looking down. And he's like, aren't you cold? All you're wearing is a gamsha, you could get sick, you must be cold, you need to cover up a little bit more. Like that. So yeah, that's one of the ways that he was very, caring like that. Sometimes I would complain that after I would, or when the time would come for me to play mridanga with him, when he would come down to lead kirtan, I was feeling dizzy. I was actually feeling quite dizzy sometimes. I didn't know why. So he said, yeah, you should maybe, drink more water, and, maybe you're kind of weak, maybe you're a little bit weak or something. So what he did was, when he went to Loy Bazaar once, I think he mentioned this to me before also, that maybe I'll bring you back some chickpeas. You need to have some chickpeas. You should soak chickpeas and eat them. You put some chat masala or something and eat them. Then that'll give you more shakti. So he brought me back some chickpeas from Loy Bazaar. He came to my room down there, and he brought them to me. He's like, yeah, Vrindavan, I brought you some chickpeas, you should, soak them in some water, and I think he said overnight, maybe soak them in water overnight, and then eat them, the next day, drain out the water, you can put some chat masala or whatever and eat, and that'll give you more shakti, He said, yeah, I brought you the smaller black ones, because, actually people like the other ones because they're bigger or whatever, but, these are actually better.
And then in 1999 summer, I made a very clear decision. I no longer live in the Western world. I'm coming to live in Vrindavan. And I bought a ticket, and I got a long-term visa, and I came. But I committed to the Gurukul initially for 1 year as an ashram assistant teacher, and then I would go for kirtan periodically. 2 hours a day, I'd find some time in my schedule. And it wasn't kirtan with Aindra, it was kirtan with Nitai or kirtan with other different devotees. Around that time, Govinda also joined up, and he was asking me to come and play mridanga for him. So different devotees were encouraging me in the kirtan party to be kind of part of the team, but I was serving as an assistant teacher in the Gurukul. But I still had a very close relationship with the department and Aindra Prabhu. But it wasn't until I came in 1999 to the Gurukul, but 2000. It wasn't until year 2000 when I took second initiation here at Krishna Bhavan Mandir and put on saffron and became a brahmachari. Then I fully came and surrendered to Aindra Prabhu. I came and knocked on his door. I told him, Prabhu, I just took second initiation. My Guru Maharaj gave me saffron cloth. I'm here to surrender to 24 kirtan. And he was like, okay, we have to, I have to speak to the management. I have to, come back in a few days and we'll discuss. Which was perfect for me because I was exhausted from traveling and serving Bhakti Tirtha Swami. All I needed to do was rest. So I woke up every morning, did my sadhana, chanted my gayatris, and took rest for 3 days. And then I came back to see him, ready to move into the ashram. And I go to knock on his door, and he comes out with this gas mask on, with tilak painted on it, making like hog sounds. He's like, Varahadev is here. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty far out. What's this guy on? What's happening? And he went in all the ashram rooms with this gas mask on, like, the Vrindavan hog is here. Varahadev. I'm like, whoa. It was going on for a little while, this whole drama. And then all the guys came out on the veranda and everyone was joking and laughing with Aindra.
And I think it was September 2003 that I first started recording with Aindra. Now let me try to remember the settings of the room. He had this huge, thick asana, thick mat, like this thick. It was just like this, just like this, but like a big one that you could like lay on. Because he was saying that, the way we need to do this is we need to record your mridanga track. And I think he said that they did this with Prasada Vraja, also with Madhava. He said that we need to put this barrier in between us, so that the sound doesn't carry from the harmonium or something like that, because he was going to pretend to sing. There's actually many recordings that we did, and we never got down to finishing them. Mostly because what he would do is, he would get really fired up about it, and we would work on it for some time, But then after a while, something else would grab his attention, and we would just kind of forget about it, and it would just sit idle, unfinished for a long time, Then finally, later on, some other time, he'd be like, okay, we have to record now. And that was mostly when, like, I was going somewhere, like right before I was traveling somewhere. This is another amazing thing, that it happened to be that during so many months, that I was here, that I wasn't traveling somewhere, for a couple months or whatever, we didn't do any recording, He never mentioned to me that, we need to, sometimes I would ask him, when are we going to record? He would say, oh, I don't know, sometime, this and that. But then when I was about to go somewhere, then he started getting fired up. Oh, you're going for some time. We need to we need to start, recording again. We need to finish the recording,
I was like, okay, Prabhu, what's with the gas mask? And he's like, oh, I'm going to Delhi. Who wants to come to Delhi with me? No one wanted to go to Delhi because it was just a very austere journey. 3.5 hours there, 3.5 hours back. Air pollution like you couldn't believe. It was actually toxic air, and he didn't want to travel alone. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to get to spend 6 hours with this devotee. Yeah, let's go to Delhi. So for the good majority of the beginning of the journey, he had this gas mask on, painted with tilak on, and a chadar covering it. It was pretty crazy. But it was practical because he was concerned. Every time he went to Delhi, he would get strep throat and throat infections from the air pollution, and he couldn't sing. Then after a while, he just gave up and pulled it off. He's like, oh, this thing is too sweaty and hot. And he just kept like a cloth over his face because it was really bad air pollution. And there were no air-conditioned cars back in those days, unless you were really wealthy or something. It's quite austere. So we went to Delhi, and he took me to this guy that was manufacturing his cassettes for him. When I saw this guy set up the factory, the guy was, copying the cassettes for him. I was like, Prabhu, this is like technology from the 1970s, maybe the 80s. This is so old school, Prabhu. And I could see how this guy was trying to put his business trap on Aindra to keep, the business running. So I let them finish their business exchange. Back in the car, I said, Prabhu, I know you're reproducing cassettes, but there's got to be something better than that guy. So that was an initiative that he took. He then dropped that guy, using that guy to reproduce cassettes. And we got another contact for another guy that had a much more modern setup and could produce cassettes at a better rate. And then my first service was for him, was to be the guy going up and down to Delhi instead of him, so that his voice could be protected. So I would do all this errand work, running up and down to the cassette production factory, bringing back boxes of cassettes, Vrndavana mellows. And then later that developed into CD production. And I would give him donations and sponsorship for his productions. Eventually I bought him multi-deck cassette copying equipment, which then became obsolete when the CD came in big time. And then like that, then we progressed to CD, etc. So I had a very hands-on way of dealing with the stuff that he was dealing with, so that I could protect him from getting cheated.
That's another thing. Whenever I would leave, he would always pretend to cry, kind of like make a crying face and some noise, something like that. Because one mridanga player less, or because he actually liked to have two mridanga players, and that was his preference.
Well, I'd come from South Africa via Mauritius with an African djembe drum. And Gunagarahi Swami was the only one who had one in Mayapur during the festival, Gorpanima 97. And he took it out on Navadip Mandal Parikrama, he brought it out, but he was very cautious about it. I was just like, give me that drum, Maharaj! And I asked him permission, and I got my hands on that drum and went out on the elephant procession one evening with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And it was insane. It was like the wildest kirtan I'd seen. Because I knew how to play mridanga, so I would complement the mridanga. I wouldn't override the drum beats, and I wouldn't play different drum beats to the mridanga. Prabhu, that kirtan in Mayapur was outrageous. They were like brahmacharis rolling on the ground. It was like something out of this world, pretty ecstatic. So I got myself my own little djembe. It wasn't a big size, it was kind of medium size. And I spoke to him about it. I said, Prabhu, I got this drum. I want to play it in the kirtan. I told him how I played it in Mayapur, and we played in South Africa and Africa and like this and that. And he was interested, so I played it to him in the room. And I showed him the high end, how the high end's a little bit like the mridanga, and the bass, it's, you know, kind of complements the mridanga. And he was interested in it. So I think one Gorpanima, I busted it out during Guru Puja. And he was checking it out, and he was jigging to the drum, and he liked it. So he said, all right, bring it for the Abhishek. I think we have some footage of it somewhere. So I brought it for Nityananda Trayodasi. I think that was 98, Nityananda Trayodasi. Can't remember exactly, maybe 97, no, 98 Nityananda Trayodasi. And I'd play it like a Punjabi dole. I'd have a thin stick, like so it gets that whack sound, and then he loved it. Nityananda Trayodasi Abhishek Kirtan. It was the first time I played it, and he was totally into it. Govinda was playing mridanga, and I was careful not to override the mridanga and to complement the mridanga. And it was like a medium-sized djembe, so it didn't over-pervade everything. So that was one festival kirtan I remember, very ecstatic. Nityananda Trayodasi. Aindra used to let it rip. That was his make or break kirtan. It would either break his voice down for the whole year, or if he could make it through that Abhishek kirtan, he'd have a voice solid for the whole year. And then for the boat festival again, I brought that drum out with him. And he loved the festival kirtans. He wanted the festival kirtans to be everybody up and dancing in ecstasy.
But he would chastise us quite often for the way that we would sing in the recordings. That was the main thing he would chastise about, because he was such a perfect singer, that such a perfectionist. Sometimes we weren't singing parts of the tune, in a way which was, so correct, or according to his bhav, his liking, his mood. Didn't have enough rasa, not the way that he wanted it. So then he would correct us. Now I had most of my experience with this was when we recorded in winter of 2006. That was me, Bhagavad Purana, and Kirtan Gopal. We were doing the response vocals for that one tune. Now this track was 40 minutes long, like I told you earlier, and you were surprised, Now it was 30 minutes half-speed dotal, I think 30, maybe 33, no, about around 30 minutes or so. 30 minutes half-speed dotal, 10 minutes 6-tal. 6-tal and maybe some 3-tal also, double. So I played 2 mridangas on that, and maybe like some kartals and stuff. Now that tune, he would call his favorite tune. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. No, not that. Yeah, this other kirtan is going on. It was Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. That tune. So, and when I did the mridanga track for it, because you see, the first thing that we would put on was the mridanga. First I would record the mridanga. Well, first we would do a guide track, We would do a guide track together, me, Aindra Prabhu, and a kartal player. It was usually Adiras, or Bhakta Greg also did once. So we would do a guide track, and then what I would do is I would listen to the guide track and play the first mridanga track. And the first mridanga track was what led the whole thing. So he would sing according to the mridanga that I had played. Sorry. So, what was I going to say?
You're just describing his favorite tune.
Yeah. So it was that tune. And, okay, so yeah, what I was going to say was that when I put on that original mridanga track, that first one, he was telling me slower as possible, slower, and the mridanga also, this is another thing about Aindra Prabhu. It was one of his pet peeves, to hear a high-pitched mridanga on the big side, because it's true actually that in any musical performance, there's a treble, mid-range, and bass. So the only bass, basically, in a kirtan, in a general kirtan, is the big side of the mridanga. That's the only thing that really gives a bass. So if that is not there, the bass is lacking. So the big head of the mridanga should be low, and it gives lots of rasa also. That's what he used to preach, and it's true actually. And it gives lots of bhav. A deep sounding mridanga. They should sound like thunder. So, at this particular time, sometimes he would kind of overdo it a little bit. Like in this one, he was like lower, as low as possible. It was flat, completely flat. And he was like as slow as possible. Also slow, very slow. It was maybe like slower than we ever did it before.
I remember him distinctly telling me, Prabhu, make sure you come on Ram Nomi. It's the anniversary of Krishna Bala Mandir's opening. I think it was the Silver Jubilee, 25 years of Krishna Bala Mandir. It was a big program. Make sure you come and bring your drum for the Abhishek. And somehow I got stuck in Delhi doing something, and I was just rushing back. Late at night, arrived early morning, took a few hours, and got straight in there because he told me to come back. So that's how he catched me, slowly, with the drum and coming for kirtans. I was a bit of a festival kirtan man. And then later when I joined, I couldn't touch the mridanga because there were other people who were overruling it or taking dominance of the mridanga playing. So I just play cartels, and I'd play when he wasn't leading. I'd play for Nitai or other people. And then eventually, I think one major kirtan, I think it was a Jamastami, he told me, Prabhu, you play mridanga. Because the mridanga player was like wiping out. Jamastami is a fast day. Somehow I was fasting as well, but I had some energy, so I passed the djembe to Govinda, and he passed me the mridanga, or someone else passed me the mridanga, and I just started to let it rip. And he loved it. He was totally into it. That year we had the Jamastami Abhishek and Kirtan in the courtyard on one of those semicircle platforms, because the crowd was just outrageous, too many people. And the Abhishek was going on in the main altar, and we were in the courtyard doing kirtan. Yeah, it was pretty wild. So like that, slowly he'd call me in for all the festival kirtans. And then on the daily basis, I would be there and be part of the team, playing cartels or gong or something, wampers. Then one kirtan, which is, for me, the all-time kirtan, is Kartik, 98. So Aindra Prabhu, up in his room, doing a Shalagram Puja. He missed the temple bus that goes to Radhakund for Bahulastami. And I'm hanging out with Madhava and this other boy, Nandulal, from New Zealand. And we booked a taxi. We were going to, three of us, go to Radhakund. We're going to hang out in Kusum Sarovar first and then go to Radhakund. So we went up to see Aindra Prabhu, take darshan of his deities. And then I said to him, Prabhu, you're going to Radhakund? He says, yeah, but I missed the bus. Do you know anyone who's going? I said, well, where we're going. And there was another Gurukul boy in the room with him, Subhakshana from Mayapur. He was studying Aindra Prabhu's Raganuga Sadhana Puja he was doing. Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti practice. Bhaktivedanta Purnamaj had sent him to study his way of worshipping the Shalagrams. So he was spending a lot of time with Aindra in his room. He says, is there space for me? I said, oh yeah, sure. And Madhu was looking at me like, hey, hang on a minute. I said, okay, Prabhu, we're leaving at this time, and you got to be there. And they turned up. They came in the taxi. We drove to Radhakund, parked up, and we had a rendezvous point because there's so many people. It's like a mini Kumbh Mela. We'll meet at the Gopal Mandir, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj's temple. After the bathing, we'll get changed there, we'll meet, and then that's how we'll stay together and go back to the taxi. So we met there, we're getting changed. I see him come in with Subhakshana, and I saw his expression in his face as he paid his obeisances to the Gopalji deity there. And I knew what he was going to ask for before he even got up for paying his obeisances. I ran around the temple looking for a harmonium. And when he got up from paying his obeisances, he says, "Is there a harmonium?" I said, "I had a look. No, there isn't." He says, "All right, well, get me some kartals." I found some kartals, and then I got Madhava Mridanga. I grabbed the gong. No electricity, just candles burning. We'd just taken bath in Radhakund Bahulastami. And then I just remember this. And then he goes up and singing this alap. And man, the entire night just turned into another reality. It's like the atmosphere just broke open and the spiritual world descended. It was one of the most unbelievable kirtans that I've ever experienced. All I can remember was being so absorbed in the holy name. All I could hear, all I could think, all I could feel was the Mahamantra. Nothing else. And at a certain point, the analytical mind kicks in and goes, what is this about this Hare, Hare, Krishna? I was hearing and seeing all of the syllables of the holy name, like in a dimension I'd never heard or saw before. And it's the Manipuri temple, it's the Gopal Mandir temple, so they have this huge Manipuri gong. And some devotee was like, banging this really far out oriental gong, you know. Some guy came in to get changed. It wasn't like one guy, just randomly this gong was being, it was like something out of this world for me. So the analytical mind's studying, what is it about this name, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama? And then I just hear the super soul jump out. Stop trying to understand it and just listen and chant. And then immediately I got back into the zone. And it was like, I don't know how to put it into words. I can't. It's just something else. Something else completely. There's no, I don't know. It's really difficult to explain. Unless you were there experiencing it, it's really another thing. Something that you can't figure out how to explain. Just the most blissful, ecstatic kirtan experience. I don't know, maybe 2 a.m., 2:30 in the morning, 2:45 or something. He finishes, and we're standing on the parikrama path around Radhakund in a circle. And I always had this thing, I would like try and figure it out. What was it that made it happen? Or what was Aindra's mood? What was his intention? So I said to him, Prabhu, how was that kirtan? He said, that was the best kirtan I've had the good honor to be in my life. That was the best kirtan I've been in my life. But he said it with so much humility, and the fact that he said that he was in, not like I'd sung or I led, that I was in, he was acknowledging the congregation, because it's Samkirtan, it's a congregational effort. It's not a one-man show. And so he was including all of us in that. And I was like, yeah, Prabhu, for me that was also one of the best kirtans I've ever experienced in my life. And so we all started to share, and then Nandu from New Zealand says, oh yeah, mate, that was better than sex. And we all started cracking up laughing. I said, Prabhu, I wouldn't know, I haven't been there yet. And we all started laughing, and we went off to the car. But it was, even the aftermath of the kirtan, we were still high. We were still buzzing. And all I ever wanted was to get that kirtan experience back. And I started to see, year after year, the same was with him. When we would go to Radhakund for Bahulastami, he wanted to do kirtan again. We went back in 99, and the Gopal Mandir was shut. They just locked the gates because so many devotees would invade, and the temple president couldn't function the puja. So they just locked the gates even before the bathing. And we tried to get in, and they allowed Aindra and me in with someone else to go and see Maharaj, his godbrother Mahanidi Swami, on the roof to discuss. But it wasn't like they were facilitating us doing kirtan. And they spoke till like almost sunrise that night. But then it was like every year he wanted to go back to chase that experience, to get that taste again. And what can I say? It was like on a material level, it was like a drug addict trying to get that first hit again. We were just chasing that one reciprocation that we had year after year. And we'd get little glimpses at midnight just before Radhakund appears. But that one in Radhakund, It's like if you were there, you were there. If you weren't, Haribol.
As far as recordings, yeah, we had some really good times, recording with Aindra. Especially in the beginning of 2004. Like around December 2003, January 2004, we were working on this specific tune that he came up with. He came up with this tune. It goes Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And it goes like really low and really high, So he just kind of came up with this tune, for the mantra program, because we were going to do a few half-speed dotals and also the mantra program. So this was the tune for the mantra program, and we worked on that mostly in the winter of this year. And one other option for that was, I remember the Mangalarti tune, was Prabhati Rag. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, but like much slower, half speed, So we did some recording with that also, but this was actually going to be the main thing that we were going to put on. And we did this tune together in the temple room also quite a bit, with the mantra program. So, he used to come and, because that was actually sometimes a little complicated, and we would get thrown off or confused a little bit sometimes. So, he used to go and wake me up sometimes at night or in the morning, and I would come in and we would be counting together. Like he would be counting. Many times this was happening, like he was counting the beats. Like, does it actually fall on the right beat? Does it fall on the downbeat? Which is the downbeat? Is it the right, 16 or 32 count, Because actually these are 32 mantra beats that we were playing. So it had to fit in properly, Now another very significant thing about us working on this particular recording at this time, was that I put so much energy into that recording, so much work into that, specifically that recording. Now, I put like 2 mridangas, I think it was, we had 2 small kartals, 1 big kartal, 1 gong, up there, you could see the big wampers, So every mantra or so, every Hare Krishna Maha Mantra or so, like at the end he would hit it with a stick, so it'd make that big sound. So that was considered like a big gong, So but we put a lot of work into that, because it wasn't an easy thing, like just a regular kirtan. You just sit down, do it, and that's it. Nothing like that. So at that time we were using an ADAT machine, whatever, if you know what that is or not, But anyway, it was a machine like, black machine like this high. It was quite simple. It had, simple buttons, stop, go, record, like that, play, and it recorded on a cassette, like a videotape, So we're recording on a videotape. We just put it in, press record, that's it. It would record on the tape. But at this point, because that machine had been used previously for prayers to the dust of Vraja, Vrajvilas, mixing and all that, and also like previous recordings that he did with Govinda also, previous tracks. So it had already been used for some time. I guess it was getting old. So in the middle of our recording, the machine ate the tape. I think I wasn't there personally. I think maybe he was singing, or he was listening or doing something with it, or leveling things out or something. And the machine started eating the tape. So it ate the tape and completely broke down. So that was like a whole drag. And the significant thing about this was that he was really on a roll at that time. He was extremely enthusiastic. He was like, yes, we have to get this done. We have to work on it for 6 hours a day. We have to work on this recording 6 hours a day until it's finished. And we have to release it for the Panchatattva installation in Mayapur, because that was coming up. This was January 2004. So, like the next month was going to be, the Panchatattva installation. We're supposed to take it over there and, distribute it as like the finished product, This is okay. So then, no, that's okay. So the machine ate the tape right in the middle of all of this, right in the middle of all of our work, and right in the middle of like the peak of like our enthusiasm, particularly his. He was getting so fired up. We have to work on it 6 hours a day, he said, until it's finished. And then this happened. The machine ate the tape, and that was it. Our work was over. We never finished the recording. It never got released, for Panchatattva installation like that, And that's when he was like, that's when he got his computer. That's when he got the computer that was sitting there from 2004 until 2010 when it melted.
So many. We've done kirtan with Aindra on the banks of the Jamuna, under a tree, on a boat in the Jamuna, on a procession, a parikrama around Vrndavana, on the rooftop, you name it. We did kirtan with him everywhere. Govardhan, Varshana, Vrindakund, Nandagram. Wherever there was a party, wherever there was a function or program, people called him, even the locals. Even the locals. And he would go, and he would do. Any opportunity to do kirtan, he would. The Goswamis would call him from Radharaman temple. They'd call him to come to Radharaman to chant for Radharaman. Different Goswamis, they take turns in doing the puja seva. It's just always an opportunity to chant Hare Krishna. He would take the invitation and go, with no material agenda, just to chant the holy names, to glorify Krishna. It was always blissful. It was always fun. Keshigat, we did kirtan at Keshigat. Someone's ashes were being put in the Jamuna. We went on a boat and did kirtan. So many kirtans, so many places. But for me, the most memorable besides that Radhakund experience was in Krishna Balar Mandir. To sit in Krishna Balar Mandir, in front of Gaurnitai, Krishna Balam, Radha Shyam, Sundar, in front of Srila Prabhupada, and do kirtan. That is the perfection of life. Sometimes there'd be no one there, just the chokidar and the Chandramrita guy, and maybe one or two pilgrims trickling through. Or sometimes there'd be 1 million people in there, as many as could fit, just dancing and rocking in ecstasy. It was the place to be to chant Hare Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada explains that everything is in the four walls of Krishna Balar Mandir. And that realization really started to come very clear to me as time started to pass, the more and more I spent here. That all there is really to do is to just sit in Vrndavana and chant Hare Krishna. And since Srila Prabhupada has arranged such a beautiful temple, it's a lazy, intelligent preaching project where people are coming to us. They're coming to us. And we preach to them by sitting one place doing kirtan.
So, as you know, I became his mridanga player. I was his mridanga player. And that was my primary relationship with him, And it was actually a very close relationship, a very powerful relationship to have with Aindra Prabhu. Because as you know, as you may know or may not know, I know you know, but whoever's watching, for a kirtan leader, or in other words, in a kirtan, Aindra Prabhu would say this also, in a kirtan, the mridanga is 50%. Mridanga is 50% of the kirtan, The way the mridanga is going is very important. The other thing that he used to do was he used to tell people a lot that there's a kirtan leader. The kirtan leader and the mridanga player, they work together, and the kartals and all those other things, they follow the mridanga. Kartals follow the mridanga, and mridanga is working with the kirtan leader or following the kirtan leader, like that. So if you were playing mridanga with Aindra, then that was like your personal relationship with him. No matter how many other devotees are in that kirtan, It's you and Aindra, like leading the way, and you kind of feed off of each other, you know. That was quite a thing. You were like Aindra Prabhu's, if you were Aindra Prabhu's Mridanga player, like, you know, Ananda Chaitanya, Gopinath, Madhava, Govinda, Gopal, myself also. If you were Aindra Prabhu's Mridanga player, you were like his counterpart, his Mridanga counterpart, like his Mridanga half, you know. It's like there's him and then there's you also, you're, you know, working together, you know, to make this thing happen, you know, as he would say.
I mean, Aindra Prabhu was there every day, no matter what, unless he was very sick. I think one time a doctor told him that if he didn't give his voice a break, he'd lose his vocal capacity. So I think for almost a year or less than a year, just under a year, he stopped coming down to do kirtan because he had to give his voice a rest. And he would just have the best man sing instead. But he'd listen on the radio. And that was difficult for him. But I think he came down for Janmashtami or some major festival days, but he went through some difficulties with his voice. So he would try and take care of that. And one year he did just kick back from doing kirtan for a while. But he was chanting 64 rounds a day instead. But yeah, the kirtans. I also remember some very memorable kirtans with Nitai. Today's the last day of Kartik. I remember 98. Was it 98? I think it was 98. I was up in Aindra Prabhu's room. He says, quick, let's go. We've got to offer our lamp. Last chance. So we took our lamps, we went down there, he lit it with tulsi wood, and we offered our lamps. And the temple room, you couldn't get in or out. I don't know how we got in. We offered our lamps, and Nitai had this kirtan that was just going somewhere else, out of this world. And the whole temple room, including the courtyard all the way back to the entrance, was just rocking, dancing. And I was just like, wow, Nitai's getting the house going. And so he went back upstairs to make his offering for the Purnima feast, the full moon feast. And I was like, I'm staying for this. And I jumped straight in on the mridanga, and that was a very memorable kirtan.
There would be times where he wouldn't come down for kirtan because his throat became sick. You know, he became a little bit sick in the throat. He would have a cold, or something would happen. So that he wouldn't be able to sing. Too much pollution, or strep throat, cough, different things. Sometimes his voice would be really, raggedy, and he wouldn't be able to sing. Sometimes this was going on for months and months. He wouldn't be singing in the temple room, actually, for months. In fact, when I joined the kirtan party, that was the case. He wasn't doing his kirtan time. He wasn't singing at all. For like maybe 5-6 months, he wasn't singing. He hadn't been singing. But then, a little later on, Purushottam Mas came, and he started, singing again. This was back in 2001. So this would happen occasionally, maybe, wouldn't say every year, but maybe like, it would happen sometimes, not too often. But it would happen, and when that would happen, for whatever amount of time, he wouldn't come down for kirtan for, anywhere from a few days to a few months. It usually wasn't that long, though. Usually it was maybe a week or two at the most, maybe, if I'm remembering properly. So this had happened in the winter of one year. I think it was either the winter of 2002 going into 2003, or the winter of 2003 going into 2004. His throat got sick and he couldn't sing, so he wasn't coming down for kirtan. So I was singing his kirtan time. I think this was 2004, 2003, 2004 winter. I was leading his kirtan time a lot, quite a bit, most of the time, since he wasn't coming down. And one day he happened to come down and check it out. He came down and just to check out and see what's going on. So I was there singing, and I called him over. I was like, hey, come play mridanga. So yeah, he was like, oh yeah, okay. So he came in, he picked up the mridanga, and he was playing mridanga. He was playing mridanga with me. Like I was singing, I was leading the kirtan, during his time, just like he usually would, and he was playing mridanga just like I usually would, like vice versa, So that was quite an amazing experience with Aindra Prabhu. And like he was a very simple mridanga player. Sometimes he used to teach us like how to play simple. So he would show us beats, and he would make noises with his mouth also, like, or something like that. That was a famous beat that he knew, very simple beat. So he had his simple beats that he would play. So I kind of tried to do what he did, and when we get the kirtan a little bit fired up, sometimes he'd be like, okay, he'd show his fist like this, meaning like, okay, heavy, like let's go fast, So then I was also doing that, and he was, smiling and also, doing, going faster and stuff like that. It was pretty far out.
Yeah, to see Aindra Prabhu in action with the locals. During an off-peak time, there's certain sadhus and local people that would come and help out with the kirtan and sit with us and chant. And one particular sadhu, Pitambara Baba, he's close with him. He's from a Nimbarka ashram. He sings very classically. It's quite classical. And so Aindra's a foreigner. He's in a foreign body. And for the locals, it would blow their mind to see him just get on that harmonium and bust out the same raga, the same tune, and then turn it this way and turn it that way and turn it upside down and this way and that way. And they would just be like, whoa, this guy, he's figured it all out. And he'd take it another level. He could take a melody or a raga, a tune, to another dimension. He had this way of cutting and pasting the tune together in such a way that it would just be like another option. He would create like a kirtan experience that was almost like unlimited. That experience of chanting the holy name, one would not want it to end. When you would get in that kirtan zone, you just want it to continue and continue and continue. And therefore we'd give it everything we had when we're in kirtan. Because it was like a glimpse of the unlimited reality of the spiritual world, which is there in Vrndavana if one tunes in. You can access the spiritual world very easily. And Aindra Prabhu was clearly connecting through the process of the Yuga Dharma. Because it is the Yuga Dharma to chant Hare Krishna, to do kirtan. He would study in his room, he would read. He knew Prabhupada's books inside and out. He could quote and reference where anything was that you needed to know. He had it, he remembered it all. And then when the folio came in, I just took it to another level. First he didn't want a computer, then we got him a computer, and then you couldn't get him off it. I don't want any Kali Yuga instrument in my room, just recording equipment. And then when we got the computer, that was it. He was just on the folio, and then he started writing and wrote his book, and so many more projects. Unlimited projects. Aindra Prabhu was on unlimited multitasking projects. At the same time as managing all the kirtan men and all their needs and the scheduling and trying to look after everyone. Taking care of his own needs. And his primary need was his sadhana. He used to have this sign on his door. Please do not disturb. And then he listed all the reasons why. And then at the end it says, at least you should understand that your primary duty in the day is to finish your minimum 16 rounds Nam Japa Vrat that you have promised your spiritual master. So please, I humbly beseech you to leave me to do the same. And he had this sign on his door. Because so many people would just come to see him at all kinds of times. We did kirtan in his room quite a few times for his deities. We would record and do kirtan to his deities in his room. Like that. Because he made his room like a studio. Insulated it, and the idea was to record his albums there. So we did kirtan in his room, we did kirtan in the ashram. A really far out kirtan I remember was Kartik 97. Again, it's the last day of Kartik. A lot of people had left. Some people leave after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day, and then it just kind of Slows down after that. So he was in this kirtan zone. And it was going, it was very ecstatic. And then the guys come in with the hose pipes and start watering down the temple room to clean. He wasn't having it. He just kept the kirtan going. And then the puddles start pouring in. And I'm like, I'm getting wet. So I stood up, hiked my dhoti up. He jumps up. His garland with his rose petals. You know, the Indian roses, they're just flower petals in the water. And we were jumping up and down, dancing in the water in the temple room. Really blissful. The next thing I know, he's taking the kirtan into the courtyard. And then he's taking the kirtan out of the courtyard around the temple. And then he's taking the kirtan into Prabhupada's Samadhi. And then we're dancing in front of Srila Prabhupada, just a handful of devotees. And then we're taking it around in front of Prabhupada's Samadhi area. And then he runs out the front gate, straight into Biharilal's shop. Because that was the hangout scene back in those days. There was no hangout before then. And then we were hanging out there with all the hangout people doing kirtan. That was funny. You know, people sipping on their chais, you know. And here comes Aindra with a kirtan party. And then all the shopkeepers came out and they put a chadar on him. Someone gave him a picture of Krishna. Someone gave him some money. And then he went from shop to shop to shop doing kirtan. It's pretty wild, you know. And then the last shop, we finished in the last shop. And then there was a fruit stand. He went in the guy's fruit stand and we were doing kirtan in the fruit stand. Auto rickshaw drove past. He stopped the auto rickshaw. We jumped in the auto rickshaw and did kirtan. Everything that moved, he did kirtan to it. Until there was nothing left. It was like 10 o'clock at night or something. Then we ended up back in the temple room. And we're sitting under the archway in front of Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi. He says, oh, well, I guess that's Kartik over. Jai Haribol. He went up to his room to finish his puja. And I just remember it being really quiet. There was no one around, just the locals. That's what I remember.
So, at one time, because as you know, he used to follow Chaturmasya. Every year he was following Chaturmasya very strictly, you know, eating only once a day. He would usually eat only once a day anyway, but you know, he lived a very austere life. You know, and once a day at night, usually, you know, whether it was Chaturmasya or not, he would eat once a day at night. It actually became a thing where his digestion, he mentioned this also, that his digestive system, you know, usually for us, like noontime is the most powerful time to digest. For him, it's not like that's opposite, completely opposite. His digestion worked only at night, you know. Because he trained his system in such a way like that, because, you know, he had to finish his puja first. You know, he used to say, yeah, I just get snagged, you know, this and that. So he would just do his puja at night. He'd take prasad every night, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and then take rest. That was his program, you know. Anybody mention this? I'm sure they did, right? Yeah. So, anyway, back to my point. I also tried to follow, you know, certain Chaturmasya vrats also with him. And at least Bhishma Panchaka I would do. At least Kartik Vrat and Bhishma Panchaka, you know. But I did Chaturmasya a couple years, maybe like 3 years in a row. 2002, 3, and 4 I did Chaturmasya, you know, including everything, Kartik Vrat and Bhishma Panchaka. But usually every year I would do Bhishma Panchaka with him. So this was Bhishma Panchaka 2003, end of Kartik. There was some confusion as to when to break fast or something, but somehow we figured it out. And well, okay, it's okay. So we're supposed to take prasad now. We're supposed to eat, break our fast. So he wanted to make sure that I was eating, you know, for some reason. You know, sometimes he was like that. He was like, okay, now you have to break fast at this time. You know, so he would always make sure that, you know, we were, you know, doing these things properly. So he came into the room just to check. Oh, Vrndavana, are you eating? You know, I was sitting down there with, you know, I'd already shaved up and everything. You know, I had, you know, a big pile of, you know, prasad I was eating, and he was like, yeah, eat big, play big, he said. Eat big, play big, you know, like that. And then another very memorable memory with Aindra Prabhu was how we did the 1 to 4 shift together, just he and I. Now this was, I believe it was in the winter. I don't know if it was, I can't remember so clearly whether it was winter or I think it was actually. It was cold, sometime in the winter. It was kind of cold. It may have been more like February or something like that, a little bit warmer, but it was cold, one of the cold months. Aindra Prabhu had a habit of, well, first of all, there was nobody here to do the 1 to 4 shift. It came to that because the devotee had to go to Nepal to renew his visa or something like that for about a week or 10 days or something. So for that remaining time, for that gap of time, we had to fill it in because there was nobody else. I think it was about a week. So and at that time we had skeleton crew. A lot of the time in the summer and in the winter, the kirtan party really deducted quite a bit. We were down to skeleton crew quite a lot, especially in the dead of winter and in the summer. So so he was like, hey, there's nobody, he's leaving. There's nobody to do the 1 to 4 shift, and it looks like we're going to have to do it. Just you and I. There was only like maybe 6 other devotees on the kirtan party at the time, So skeleton crew, no one else, So we're like, hey, let's do it, you and I, we'll do the 1 to 4 shift together. So we did it, for about a week, and a lot of the time, actually that was 2003, maybe. I don't know. 2003. They were in 2003. They did a lot of different things to the temple room, as far as the painting and stuff. They actually they shaved off all the paint from the walls and stuff. It used to be like white, but painted white. They shaved it off, to a point where it was like the original color during Prabhupada's time or whatever. So they were like sanding down the above the altars, right above the altar doors. And they were like sanding it down until 3 a.m. They would do that all night until 3 o'clock until it was finished. So and that machine was making really a lot of noise. Really heavy sound, So, what we would do is we would mostly sit in the back of the temple room. Generally, the front part is considered the kirtan mandap, but because of time, place, and circumstance, somehow it was all dusty and stuff. So we would sit in the back part. By the Gornitai bookstall, more like in front of the Gornitai bookstall, but towards the courtyard. So I would sing until this wasn't happening every day, but some of the time, from 1 to 3, I was singing. I would sing, with the harmonium. He would just be sitting there chanting japa because of the noise. He wasn't able to sing over such loud noise, It would hurt his voice and, disturb him and stuff, So he would just wait until the noise stopped. I would just sing just to carry the kirtan. He would just be chanting japa. At 3 o'clock, once they were done, they clean everything up. Then we would move to the front part of the temple room, to our usual spot, and then we would start our thing. He would start singing very nice, slow tunes. A lot of the time it was the Mangala Arati tune. Sung very slow and drawn out. And it was just he and I. I'd be playing mridanga, playing all the different mantras to go along with the slow singing. Like that. It was a good experience. It was very nice. And during that time, I remember Aindra Prabhu actually had a habit of taking a lot of different. He had a lot of different medicines he would take sometimes, like Dynaford, Madhuvani, just to name a couple. And I think there were a couple more I can't really remember off the top of my head right now, but these were a couple of them. He used to take a few different other things too, just for his voice. Sometimes, painkiller, Dynaford, Madhuvani, this, that, So, but he wouldn't always take them all at once. But this time, for some reason, he took all of them at once. All these different medicines, he just took a whole bunch. He was explaining, after I took this, I took that, and then I took some of this, then I took this, then I took that. And then he came down for kirtan. So what happened was, he came down for kirtan. I'm 1 o'clock a.m. I'm singing, and he was saying that, oh yeah, my stomach feels really bad. He was like really nauseous, and this and that. He was feeling really bad. Suddenly he had to leave. He had to go upstairs, because he was feeling too nauseous. So he went up the stairs. While he was coming up the stairs, Brahmacharya Ashram stairs, then he puked all that stuff up into the corner. Just a little bit, and then I remember there was actually a mark there. It was just a little. It wasn't like so much, just a little bit. A small puke there in the corner. You could see it whenever you went up or down the stairs. Aindra Prabhu's mark, Mahaprasad. So then he came back down and told me the whole thing. Yeah, because I took this, I took that, took this, took that, and then this, and then that. So he just I just vomited on the corner, on the way up the stairs.